Preface to a Grammar of the Arabic Language, in which the rules are illustrated by authorities from the best writers, principally adapted for the service of the Honourable East India Company by John Richardson. Recorded for the Arabic Language Learning Collection, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Abu Jalal. Preface to a Grammar of the Arabic Language, in which the rules are illustrated by authorities from the best writers. By John Richardson. Preface. In the 8th, 9th, and succeeding centuries, when the European world was clouded with barbarity and ignorance, when foreign princes and great feudal lords could neither write nor read, the Arabians rivaled the Romans of the Augustan age in erudition and genius, whilst with a more extensive empire, note the great empires of the Mogul, of Persia, of the Turks, of Morocco, besides many other powerful kingdoms, have been founded on the ruins of the wide extended dominions of the Caliphs, which at one time comprehended Arabia, Chaldea, Assyria, Media, Persia, the Khorasan, Samarkand, Bukhara, Kabul, Kandahar, Zablistan, etc., the greatest part of India, many districts along the Oxus or Gihon and the Caspian Sea, Circassia, Georgia, Armenia, Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, Cyprus, part of Asia Minor, Egypt, the Mediterranean coasts of Africa, Morocco, Fez, Spain, Sicily, Naples, part of France, etc., etc., in all which countries, if we accept the European states, the Arabic is to this day cultivated with care, as being the language of their religion and their law. End note. They excelled them in magnificence and in the more refined splendour and elegance of life. The Caliphs al-Mahdi, al-Rashid, al-Ma'mun, and other monarchs of the illustrious house of al-Abbas were men of learning, genius and politeness. Learning and genius were found therefore the surest avenues to royal favour. They were of consequence universally cultivated, princes, generals, and viziers being not only munificent patrons of literary merit, but holding themselves a conspicuous rank among writers of the most distinguished class. The Arabian chiefs, with, it must be conceded, an alloy of ferocity, were in general brave, liberal, hospitable, ingenious, penetrating, fond of learning of every species, and carrying to the most singular excess their admiration of poetry and eloquence. With such dispositions and attachments, therefore, it is easy to conceive that their language became naturally an important object of their attention. The dialects of their numerous tribes furnished them with rich minds. From these they freely borrowed, and formed from the whole a language sublime, comprehensive, copious, energetic, delicate, majestic, adapted equally for the softness of love, or the poignancy of satire, for the mournfulness of elegy, or the grandeur of heroics, for the simplest tale, or the boldest effort of rhetoric. In every style of composition, therefore, the books in this language are numerous, and many of them of high intrinsic worth. Their books, however, and their language remain still but imperfectly known in Europe, nor can we ever hope, perhaps, for much advancement in this branch of learning, till the formidable, fancied difficulties of the study are removed, till curiosity is stimulated by a hope of success, till attention is fixed by a conviction of its utility. Among many reasons which may be assigned for our limited knowledge of this language, the first, and perhaps not the least, arises apparently from the perplexing obscurity and unengaging manner of grammarians, who without sufficiently attending to that simplicity and perspicuity which ought ever to be the necessary guides to the uninformed minds of youth, bend their chief efforts to the investigation of unuseful trifles, uninteresting definitions, and polemical subtleties, involving the whole in such obscure terms as to demand often as much time, patience, and penetration to decipher the meaning of the teacher as to acquire the language itself through a less complicated medium. Many of our European editors and commentators, it may also be observed, have been men merely learned in language, with little taste or general science, to direct their learning to proper objects. The books they have published, therefore, have not all been chosen with skill, for whatever motives might invite them to become Arabic editors, instruction or entertainment appears by no means to have been always in view. Chance more than discernment appears often to have selected their publications, and an unnecessary display of learning seems the only point of their ambition. Whilst their Latin versions, without elegance and often without accuracy, possess neither the beauty of an ingenious paraphrase nor the usefulness of a literal translation. With a view to lead the way to a more simple mode of instruction, this grammar has been undertaken. With what success, the candour of those who can judge must determine. The Persian grammar has been the model I have attempted to follow. Note by William Jones, Esquire, Barrister at Law, author of Poeseos Asiaticae Commentarii, and other learned and ingenious works, from whom had his superior pursuits and views permitted, the elements of Arabic grammar might have been expected on a far more masterly scale than what is now with great deference submitted to the public. The valuable printed books and manuscripts, with which, long before I entertained the least idea of this publication, that gentleman unasked most politely assisted me, demands my highest acknowledgments, whilst his favourable opinion of the plan is to me a circumstance of the most flattering nature. I consider myself likewise as singularly happy in the approbation of the Reverend Mr. White of Wadham College, Professor of Arabic, and the Reverend Mr. Winstanley of Brazen-Nose College, Oxford, whose extensive learning and solid judgment would stamp a value on works of far more importance. But it becomes at the same time necessary to observe, in justice to these three gentlemen, that the shortness of the time and the distance of situation, making it impossible for me to consult them till the sheets were printed off, whatever mistakes or improprieties may be discovered must be imputed to the author alone. End note. And whilst I have endeavoured to imitate the perspicuity with which the sensible author explains the difficulty of that study, I have pursued his method of illustrating the different rules by authorities from various writers, a method which, at the same time that it instructs, softens the drudgery unavoidable in a beginning study, unites practice with theory, and introduces the learner imperceptibly to some acquaintance with the genius and manner of several respectable Arabian authors. The gentlemen in the service of the Honourable East India Company have been principally in view in the composition of this grammar, convinced from the opinion of many learned and judicious men, as well as from my own less perfect observation, how impossible it was to acquire an accurate idea of the Persian without studying the genius of the Arabic, upon which it so remarkably depends. Note, exclusive of the Arabic sentences, which occur in almost every Persian book, 3/4 perhaps of the component words of this tongue are either adopted or derived from that language, so that it is equally impossible to compile a Persian dictionary without the assistance of the Arabic, as to confine the English language to words of mere Celtic origin, to the exclusion of every derivation from the Greek, Latin, French, and other dialects. On a superficial view, it may be supposed, perhaps, that as the genius of the two languages is so different, a perusal of Arabic grammar can throw no